All right. I am crazy excited about this new video or this next video. And this is video 3 in this series. So why am I excited about this one? Nothing against the first couple of videos. I mean, the first one was just talking about resources. Where do you have, what resources are available to you? Where do you find them? All that kind of stuff. We have to share that stuff. The second one is more kind of the nuts and bolts of how to build a task list. And that's fun. I enjoy that. That's great. And we'll talk about that very briefly here in this video again, just to summarize. But the reason why I'm excited about this one, this is not just about knowledge. Okay, we're going to get some knowledge in this video, but this is about doing the actual work. Okay, and I get more excited about that. I think we can definitely learn from gaining some knowledge and studies and blah, 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 blah. But I'll just tell you right now, I think we learn a heck of a lot more just by actually doing. So what we're going to talk about is the knowledge part is where do we actually gather all the information to process a new file? Okay, so that's the first part. That's the knowledge part. So where do I gather information that I'm going to share? Because when I process a file, I'm sharing information with the broker, compliance manager. I'm sharing information with the lender, the closer, attorney, or title company, whatever it is in your area, with the agents, with our clients. So where do I gather all of that information? And how do I even know that what I have gathered and what I'm sharing is state specific? How many people post in the different Facebook groups, hey, does anybody have a task list? And then they mention that it's state specific for Florida or for Texas or for California. Okay, I'll tell you exactly how you're going to know that your task list is state specific. So where do you gather that information to actually process a file? Then the next part that we're going to go through, that's the information part. Okay, and that's all good. That's all fun. Okay, but then it's what does it look like? What does it actually look like? What does an actual transaction summary sheet look like? What does a task list look like? What does a email look like to actually process a new file, to actually do the work and get it out there? And then the next video, I think it's the next video or the video after that, we're going to actually give you an actual outline for those intro emails. You don't have to come up with it yourself. I'll tell you exactly what I would put in that intro email. Okay, so let's do some work. Okay, so let's jump in here. You know how we're set up so far. You can go right to the blog. In fact, sometimes I think I forget to increase the size of this, so you feel like someone's actually talking to you in real time here, is you can go right back to the blog and where we left off last time as far as the outline is concerned. Now, if you still like the full outline, you can click here and it's 15 pages long. So if you just want one link for the entire outline for all of these videos, you can just go ahead and download that, print that, whatever you want. That's just too big for me because it's about 15 pages long. I don't appreciate that. The next thing is that we took that outline, broke it into 4 separate smaller outlines. I like things in smaller chunks. That's just the way I like to work. So we are still on the second outline. If you remember from the last video, we had started with the part 2 of 4 for the outline, and we only made it about halfway through the outline. I was going to do the whole outline in about an hour, but after a half an hour when we got to your homework, it felt like a good natural place to take a break. So we took a break, and now this is the second part of the outline, but we are going to go back right now and do a quick review of your homework because it is going to affect what we're about to do. So you are supposed to create your own task list. So we first educated you is there's a task list, but what's the purpose of the task list? The fact is we have to start with what is the level of service that we want to provide. And I mean it literally. What is the level of service? What is everything that we want to promise to our client that we're going to get done for them? And then what is the task list? It never starts with the task list. It starts with what is the level of service we want to provide. The task list is what makes sure that we detail out what does it take to actually accomplish that promise. If we say that we're going to achieve a certain level of service for them, what are all the tasks that we have to complete to make sure that that becomes a reality? So that's how we're building out and determining what's on our task list. Now, are we going to want to make sure that not only are we doing services that they appreciate, but we're taking care of services that are required of a transaction to be compliant nationally, state, local, and via your broker? Absolutely. Okay. So we talked about how to put those things together. We gave you resources, whether it be in the TC 101 toolkit or in our Google Drive, for a bunch of sample task lists so that you could start building yours out. But you don't know yet if you built it out, if yours is state specific. We'll get there, how you get that. Once you get that task list built out, we're asking you, or we're suggesting to you, to take something that's, say, 50 to 100 tasks. To me, that's overwhelming. Might not be for you. Maybe you're a better human than I am, okay? But I like to take something like that, and then I'm going to break it out into smaller, more manageable pieces. So you saw how I break that out. I break it into 5 stages or phases, whatever phrase you like better. So there's the opening stage, what it takes to process a new file. Gathering all the information, that's what we're going to focus on today. How do we gather and where do we gather all that information? Who do we send it out to? The lenders, the closers, the title companies, agents, customers, so on and so forth. Then there's the inspection period. Then there's the title and finance period. Then there's the pre-close, 5 to 7 days, 7 to 10 days prior to closing. And then there's a post-close. So you take your task list and then break it into 5 sections. Then the last thing that I suggested for your homework is now go back through and rename or retitle every single one of your tasks. Shouldn't take you more than about 10 minutes to do that. If you're taking more than 10 minutes, don't make this a week-long project. Don't make this a 3-week-long project, 3-month-long project. Do it in 10 minutes. Just rename them and do it based on this formula. Think about what part of the 5 stages it's in. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Start with, and I gave you an example of what it would look like, literally. Okay, so start with the stage number. So if it is an appraisal, as we use that example, that would be in stage or phase 3 of the 5. So it'd be 3 dash. Now, if your task is broken out into, rather than just saying appraisals, maybe it is broken out the way that I do it, which is, I told you I break my appraisal out into 5 separate tasks. I won't go through that again here and waste your time, but then it would be, okay, so there's 5, but one of them is called a key moment. Again, if you don't know what key moment means in this definition, go back to the last video. Okay, it's explained in there. But that key moment, everything is going to be 3-APP because it's part of a group. Okay. Some people call it a parent-child relationship, okay? But it's part of a group is really what it is. And then you're going to use the actual title. Now, when it gets down to the key moment, which is in the last video, you're going to fully capitalize that. And there's a reason that we gave in those videos why you want to use that formula and how much easier it makes your job when you wake up in the morning, go to your chosen tool, A-frame, TC Docs, or whatever, and it shows you got 75 or 50 tasks that are due. It's easy to sort through them because you can see things very quickly just by the way it's actually titled. Bam, that's your homework. Okay. Now, how do you know when you are going to do this opening process? How do you know where to gather all the information that is needed to go ahead and process that file? Such as, I'm just going to use an example, say an attorney or title company or escrow, whatever it is in your area, and the lender. Just those two we're going to use for a second. How do you know what information they're going to want to know? How do you even know that? Okay. If you're brand new to transaction coordination, okay, you might know that you got a bunch of contracts in front of you. I mean, do they want the whole contracts and all I got to do is forward them the contracts? If I'm doing that, why didn't the agent just forward it directly to them? Okay. So here is what I'm going to tell you is how you know what you're going to give to them. You usually can find that out through 3 things that you're really looking at. Number 1, there's going to be transaction summary sheets. And I'm not going to ask you to come up with what is a transaction summary sheet or to start from scratch and just figure out what you'd want on a transaction summary sheet. I actually gave you a link directly to my Google Drive, as we've done in the past. And when you go to that Google Drive, you'll notice that there's a bunch of task lists in there, as we've already gone through. But there's also a folder called Transaction Summary Examples. Now, these are actual transaction summary sheets that people are using in their real business. These aren't just like sample random things. These are ones that actual transaction coordinators have shared within the groups and says, this is what I'm using for transaction summary sheet. So I think my opinion would be the best place to start. What are other TCs using? What have they determined that after all their experience, they have decided this is what my lenders want. This is what my title people, escrow people, attorneys want. And then I'm going to put it on one sheet. So what do those look like? So let's just take a look at this one. Now, if I'm going to talk about a transaction summary sheet, and there's going to be a bunch of examples here. Okay. I'll just page through a few of them. Okay. And I'm not stopping on this one for any reason, just so I can talk. Okay. So don't look at this one and go, this is the ideal. Okay. This may not be the ideal, but here's the deal is what you're looking for is this. What your lenders, closers, everybody else wants, attorneys, titles, they want to know all the terms and conditions of what's in the contract, such as what is the sales price? What is the earnest money? What is the money down? So is there an inspection? Is there not an inspection? What are all the due dates? Okay, there'll be multiple due dates in a contract. So in your transaction summary, you want to break out every single one of the due dates. Then who's involved in the transaction? Who's the buyer? Who's the seller? Who's the buyer's agent? Who's the seller's agent? Who is the lender? Who are the closers, attorneys, everything else like that? Do you notice when they say transaction summary, you're literally doing that. All you're doing is summarizing all of the terms and conditions and information that you're able to gather on this transaction, and you're putting it in one place so that everybody that you share this file with has one place that they can go to, and it tells them everything that they need to know. Now, is that transaction summary sheet some form of a contract? Nope. It is still, if you got something wrong on that transaction summary, it could cause a real problem. But here's the thing is, in reality, even if you typed something wrong on there, what's on there to a certain extent is a little irrelevant, because it's what's on the contracts that truly matter and would hold up in the court of law. Your transaction summary sheets, you're doing your best to put everything on basically a single sheet or a single area that summarizes everything for them. Now, for me, I also like to put on there what are the commission splits, commission breakdowns, all that type of stuff. Now, depending on your state, and this is the first place I'm now getting into a technicality. Okay, so notice I'm going very specific into a technicality here that would may be different per area. Okay, and what that is going to be sharing commission splits. So I'm just using a general number. Okay. If the listing is on the MLS, and let's just say that it's 6% listing, okay? Now, on the MLS, that listing agent would have put how much are they paying out to the buyer's agent. So let's say it was 2.7. So what's the split? The split would be is that the listing agent is going to get a commission of 3.3. The buyer's agent is going to get a commission price of 2.7. Now, in some states, you would actually put that information on a transaction summary sheet and share it with all sides, okay? There are other areas that I've worked, you wouldn't do that if your life depended on it, because what is disclosed in the MLS is say that it was 2.7, as we just mentioned, but they don't have to disclose what the total commission is. So we disclose what the buyer's agent is going to make, but we don't disclose what the listing agent is going to make, okay? So we'll talk about that a little later, how what are you going to disclose, what are you not going to disclose. But anybody who says it's one way or the other, no, it's not. Sometimes it is per area, and we get TCs that maybe are a little bit newer in the industry, and they're in a specific area, and they're in the Facebook groups, and someone may bring something up and they go, no, it doesn't work this way, or it doesn't work that way. They may only be familiar with their area. This can look different per area. So I don't want to confuse you on that, but just know that that is something that you want to take into consideration. What's the next thing that may or may not be disclosed? On that transaction summary, is there may be additional admin fees. So let's just say the listing broker is going to charge 6% listing fee plus, I'm making up a number right now, $395 or $495. Let's just stick with $395 right now, a $395 admin fee. So the commission breakdown is actually 6% plus $395 admin fee. Now, they break that down on the commission sheet or transaction summary as 3.3 plus 395 and 2.7. Now, who knows? The broker's agent may also have an admin fee. So it might be that theirs was 495. So it might be 2.7 plus 495. Okay. So why is all of that important? Because when we come to just pre-closing, I told you on the last video that one of the things I like to do on pre-closing is I actually like to look at the settlement statement and make sure all the commissions and admin fees are accounted for. Okay. Now, technically, who has the last say that those fees are correct? I make sure that my agents have the last say. So I might see that, okay, it showed 3.3, showed 2.7, but I don't see the admin fee. Okay. And so I may send that back to the title company, attorneys, escrow, whatever it is. Say, hey, by the way, the commission looks right, but it looks like we're missing an admin fee. And they go, oh, yep, let me resend that to you. I'll add that on there. They add $395. So that's the type of stuff I was talking about in the last video that I check. Then I send it to the agent and say, by the way, please look at this and verify that you're okay with it and that the commissions are correct. I looked at it. The last I knew that your commission was based off of this sales price at 3.3%, which would be this. Looks like that is what I'm seeing on there, and that you'd have a 395, and I'm accounting that that's on there too. But please verify that everything is just as you'd like it, and then I'll let the title and the closers know that we are good to go. Okay, so that would be an example to take what I said in the last video another step farther. So commissions, what you share and what you don't share, can be a little specific on your transaction summary sheet. So there's a bunch of examples here. Okay, now I'm going to get rid of this. Now let's go back here. Okay, so what is needed to process a file? The first place I start is what is on my transaction summary sheet. Why do I start there? Because that tells me, reminds me, what do I need to gather? What information do I need to gather that I know that the title companies, mortgage companies, and everybody else would want? Okay. Second place, my compliance checklist with whatever agent I'm working with. They usually are licensed under a broker, or they are a broker, either way. Okay. But whether they're licensed under a broker or they are a broker, they have some form of a compliance checklist. Okay. Now, at a brokerage, the broker needs to make sure that they are meeting all of national, state, and local laws, period. Now, because of that, they will have a compliance list that makes sure when you turn in a file, they're going to go through that file with a fine-tooth comb and make sure that everything that's in that file is considered compliant. If not, they're going to throw it back at you. Okay. And they're going to say, hey, you're missing this document. Hey, you're missing this signature. Hey, you're missing this initial. Hey, you're missing whatever it is. Hey, this is wrong. Everything else like that. That's the compliance manager's job, but they don't do that from memory. Just like you have a task list, they have a compliance checklist. Sometimes old school brokers are going to have that in a PDF format. It's just literally a physical paper checklist. Some of them still, some of them it's in digital form. So if I'm at a Keller Williams agent, okay, they're always, if not number one, top 2 or 3 brokerages in the entire country. It used to be Remax was number 1, then Keller Williams was number 1, and it fluctuates. But the fact is they're huge. Okay, whether by the time you watch this video, they're number 1 or number 3, they're huge. Okay, so they have their own set of electronic tools, and one of them is called Command. Command is the agent's kind of hub where all of their CRM database is kept. It's where they have files processed, where their commissions, everything else, their compliance checklist, everything is in there. They got social media ability in there where they can build out graphics and everything else. It's a great tool for them. Okay. But they're not, most of the Keller Williams brokerages aren't going to have a paper checklist to share with you. They're going to say, well, our compliance requirements are inside Command. So then you need to get your login and password from your agent, okay, and go into their Command and take a look at their compliance section. That is their compliance checklist. So now if you have a transaction summary, you know what to look for. You know what information to gather from what the agent sends you. You know what to gather and to provide to other people. If you have the compliance checklist, you also know, looking through what the agent sent you, what is missing, what they've included, all those types of things, okay? Do we have what we need to have a compliant file, okay? And then when I share with the lender and the title company, as I used as an example, not only I'm going to share the transaction summary and everything that I have myself personally, it's more important to tell them what you are not sending them, okay? They're not stupid, okay? So if I send them a file, technically, I don't even have to tell them what I'm sending them. Hey, I'm sending you a file that includes this, 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 and this. They're not dumb. They're looking at it. You just sent it to them, okay? They know what you sent them. They literally are looking at it in real time. Worry more about telling them what you're not sending them. Hey, by the way, just sending you a file with the transaction summary sheet and all of the docs that we currently have. Here's what you will notice when looking through the documents that is still missing. Here's when you can expect to receive them. And here's who's tracking down each of those missing items. Now, you don't have to take notes on those 3 items because that's going to be part of my email outline and template that I'm going to share with you in the next video. But that is what I do. So where do I know what to gather? It's in my transaction summary. It tells me all the information that everybody would want. Second, then from there is I'm looking at a compliance checklist because that's going to inform both my task list and my transaction summary per that area, per that broker. Okay. The last thing is I need to know my contracts. So there's 3 things you need to have or know inside and out. Transaction summary sheet, compliance checklist for the broker that you are serving and working with that agent, whoever that agent is working with. And the last one is the contracts. So this last one and the previous one, the compliance checklist, but the last one, knowing your contracts. I'm just telling you right now, how do you know if you're state specific? Number one, your compliance checklist is going to be very state specific because it's broker specific, and your broker has a lot on the line to make sure that they are state, national, and local compliance. Okay. They are compliant, period. So their compliance checklist is how you know if you're state specific. I can't be any more clear than that. Well, I want a state specific task list. You need a task list that works for that particular broker. And I'll just tell you right now, that particular broker is probably that task list will work in all of your local area there, because every one of the brokers in your local area needs to be compliant at every level. That is non-negotiable. If they get audited and they're not compliant, they got real problems, okay? So you need to know what compliance looks like for the broker. Now you take your task list, know what the broker requires. That's how you know if you're state specific, because they're state specific, okay? Now compare what they need to your task list and make sure your task list accounts for what they need, because they are compliant nationally, state, and local. Guaranteed they are. Otherwise, they're not in business very long. Okay. But what's the last part of this? You got to know your contracts. Now, I will admit I'm a little over the top on that. I will tell you this. I'm going to give you 3 levels. I'll leave myself at last. You're going to have some people, all they know is where on the contracts that there are blanks for them to fill out. And if you think I am over-exaggerating that, I guarantee you there are agents out there that when they are filling in a contract for their buyers or sellers, they literally just know where the blanks are. They have no idea what the verbiage is in between the blanks. If a contract were 12 pages, 30 pages, 60 pages, okay? And I say, let's just say the initial purchase agreement, depending on the state, might be 5 to 10 pages long, just the purchase agreement, no amendments or anything, okay? And I said, on page 3, line this, or this section of the purchase agreement, what exactly is that all about? They would have no idea. Then you're going to have an extreme, which is myself. Someone could mention something, and they're talking in general, and go, wait a minute, are you talking about on page 2, line 75? Most purchase agreements in most states, not only is there a lot of paragraphs, a lot of spaces to fill out, everything else like that, but each line is numbered. I love them contracts, okay? And so when they mention something, not only have I read it, I actually know what that whole section is about, and I know what it means. Now, that's an extreme, okay? But I love this stuff. I love it, I love it, I love it. And I'm not telling you that you've got to be able to recite that stuff. I couldn't recite every word on it, but I could say, so line 75 through 85 really deals with this. And if you dig into it, I'll be dead on, okay? So I'll just tell you right now that that's another level versus you got people that basically they only know where the blank spaces are and generally what to put in there or what most commonly is put in there. And they don't even know on a couple of those why they're answering those questions the way that they are. And then you've got other ones. They actually have pretty reasonable knowledge and they could really have a good discussion with you about contracts. But in a day-to-day practice, they mainly just know how they serve their customers and how they typically fill in the blanks. But then if a customer says, okay, on this one, can you explain this? And they do a pretty good job at they'll go in, they'll read it again, and they'll be able to go ahead and have a decent conversation with their customer. Now, with all of that said, you are not the client's agent. Let me repeat, you are not the client's agent. You are not the buyer. You are not the seller's agent. So in my opinion, should you know the contracts inside and out, and will that take some real work? 100% yes. And it's hard to convince me otherwise that you shouldn't know where to find everything on the contract and generally speaking, know the contracts inside and out. This is your chosen industry. And you're dealing with these documents every single day. Okay? I still think you should know them, even if you're not advising people on them, okay? How do you get to know them? You read them. You read them over and over and over and over again, okay? Now, do I use that knowledge to advise clients? No way. I'm not overstepping my bounds, and I'm not going to get myself in legal trouble because I am overstepping my bounds. I am not their agent. And I'm not there to advise them on legal matters, contractual matters, or anything like that. If I'm going to do that and they ask me something and say, actually, I think what you're asking is covered in this section and let me do this, I'm going to put an email. Now, notice I said email. I'm not calling. I'm not texting. I'm going to do everything so that I have my butt covered legally in writing that I did not advise them. What I'm going to do is say, I will go ahead, let me do this. That's actually a better question for your agent. Now can be tough to say when I know the real answer, and I've dealt with thousands of contracts, okay? Now, do I know real estate better than a lot of the agents that I've worked with? By common sense, I should. I might deal with 100 files simultaneously. Well, they've got 2 files in the pipeline. Okay, I might deal with hundreds of files, maybe 1,000 files in a year. And a good agent is going to close 24 to 34 in a year. Who has more experience with the contracts? I do. I still don't advise. So what I will do is say, you know what, that's a great question for your agent. Let me do this. I'm going to put together an email and I'm going to ask that specific question in a way that I believe it would get you the most help from your agent. And what I'll do is I'll email both you and your agent and ask your agent to help you with that. So I will go ahead and put that email together. Why? I want to document it that I did not advise them and that I went ahead and I rephrased the question in a way that the agent could be most helpful to the client. Then from there, I never trust that if there is an email that I'm going to send, that the agent sees that and they actually do anything with it. Okay. Now, that might just be a chip on my shoulder that I don't trust an agent. Okay. It's not my job to trust the agent. I do a better job for the agent if I never trust my agent. Okay. So I never trust that my agent is actually going to be on top of their job. That's my job to make sure that they stay on top of their job on certain things. So what I do is when I send that email out, then I immediately, when I'm done with that, I text my agent or call them. And I say, hey, by the way, your customer had a question with this. I wanted to make sure I didn't overstep my bounds and answer that question. So what I did is I just sent you an email and copied them in. and it's an email that I need you to touch base with your client on. So I don't trust with all the emails that my agents get that they're actually going to see it and they're actually going to reply. So what do? It takes me, 30 seconds to quickly text the agent. By the way, I just sent you an email that needs your attention, and it's titled this, question from your client. And I wanted to make sure that I reference them back to you rather than overstepping my bounds and answering that question. Okay. So notice how this all goes down to the question that I get from new TCs, or any TC for that matter. How do I know that what I'm doing is state specific, or the task list that I've got is state specific? I'm telling you right now that your agents and your broker need to be compliant, both state, national, and local. So if you go by their compliance checklist, they're going to be compliant. And then you need to take a look at the task list that you put together, which, remember, is all about what is the level of service I want to provide. Then I put my task list together. Now that task list is just the services I want to provide. Then I look at, what does the broker require? What is their compliance checklist? And then I go ahead and I go back and forth with my task list, and I update my task list to make sure that my task list takes into consideration what compliance looks like for the broker that I'm dealing with. Okay. Hope that helps. Okay. Now, so we're talking about transaction summary sheets, compliance checklists, and contracts. Transaction summary sheet, compliance checklist, contracts. I can say that 500 times. Those three things you need to know inside and out. Okay. Now, I will tell you this, cheat. Okay. When I say cheat, okay, I mean cheat. In this industry, what I mean by cheat is not a negative thing. It's you being willing to be humble enough to look at what everybody else does and see, I like their transaction summary sheet better than mine, and I may be willing to edit mine a little bit. Don't get so stuck in your ways. I would pay real close attention if you're in a file. Let's say you got 12 transactions going at a time right now. If you have 12, that means there's you on one side of all 12 of those. 9 times out of 10, actually almost 10 times out of 10, there's going to be someone else on the other side. Every once in a while, you get a file where your agent is representing both sides. Doesn't happen a ton, but it does happen. Okay. But let's assume every time that there's an agent or a transaction coordinator on the other side. Not all of them will use a transaction summary sheet, but many of them will. And some of them, you will get copies of those and you will see their transaction summary sheet. Pay attention. Look at it. What is the information that they're sharing with everybody? Look at the information that they are summarizing, and look at your transaction summary and go, I like the way they laid that out better. I like the information that they shared about this part of it better. I like this. And then go ahead and update yours. It won't take too many files and too much experience for you to go, you know what? I'm real happy with my transaction summary. Why am I happy? Because when I send it out to agents, when I send it out to lenders, when I send it out to closers, they all love it. How do I determine really that I am comfortable with what I'm doing and I'm comfortable with all my tools and my email templates and my transaction summary sheets and my task list? Because I'm complimented up and down, left and right all day long. Now, I'm not going to pull it up right now, but I have emails from closers. Now I almost said her name. I have a closer that I've closed hundreds of files with, and I don't mean that figurative. Literally, I've closed hundreds of files with this title company with one specific closer. And I bet 2 or 3 times a year, she sends me an email back after I send her a file. And she says, I just have to tell you, I don't know if she just likes to compliment me from time to time, or if she forgets that she said almost these exact words a couple months ago. And she does it a couple times a year. And she'll say this, you know what, David, I just need to let you know how much we appreciate you, because when we get a file from you, we literally all smile in the office because we know it's going to be the cleanest, most organized file we get all day, all week, and all month. In our office, what we commonly say every time we get an unorganized or bad file, this person should be required to work with David Breckheimer and be trained by David Breckheimer. We in this office wish everybody was required to work with you for 3 months so that every file that we received looked like yours. And she says something like that to me a couple times a year. That's how I know that my transaction summary sheet is what they're looking for. Okay. So how do you know that you're compliant? I think I've beat that dead horse like nobody's business. How do you know what to put together and where to gather your information to process a file? Your transaction summary sheet reminds you what you're looking for. And in that transaction summary sheet, all those points, you just need to know where to find that information in the contracts. Okay. The last thing I'm going to go through, and maybe I'll add it to this outline. I haven't. The last thing is, and we are going to hit this on the communications, the relationship and communication part is, what do I require of my agents? What do I require them to send me or share with me for me to process their file? I don't just process a file because they sent me a contract. That doesn't mean a hill of beans to me. I let them know, and I use the word triggers. So if you want vocabulary, scripts, use the word triggers. I tell my agents there are, and then whatever your number is. For me, it's usually 2 or 3, but right now I'm just going to use the example of 2. I'll tell my agent, Joe, there are 2 things that will trigger me to actually process your file. I'll repeat that. Joe, there are actually 2 things that will trigger me to actually process your file. First trigger, number 1, send me everything you got. Okay. I know it's probably incomplete. I get it. Okay. Probably missing your buyer compensation agreement. You do every time, and I'll play around with them, have some fun with them, make fun of them. Okay. Mock them. Okay. We're going to have a good time, but I will tell them, send me everything you got. Number 2, answer 3 questions. If an agent doesn't answer these 3 questions, I will not process their file. I will just ask them for the answer to those 3 questions. Now, some of you will process without the answer to these 3 questions. These are important to me. You don't have to do this, but I'm telling you, this is how I know I'm going to process a file. Send me everything you got and answer these 3 questions. What are the 3 questions? By the way, these 3 questions are included in the next couple videos around communication and relationships with my agents, okay? And what it is this. Don't tell me what you're sending me. Number 1, tell me what you're not sending me. What's missing from the file? Number 2, and some people say, well, my agents don't even know what's missing from the file. I don't buy that, and I don't care. Okay. I think some TCs give their agents a bit of a break on that. For me, they expect me to be a professional at the highest level. To them, didn't they have to pass a national test, state test, and know what their broker requires of them? As far as I'm concerned, the answer is a hardcore yes. Okay. So they need to know what a compliant file looks like for their broker. Do many of them? A lot of them don't. I'll admit that. Okay. But here's the deal. They're supposed to know. And so I tell them, you should know what a compliant file is. So number 1, don't tell me what you're sending me. Tell me what's missing. What are you not sending me? Number 2, tell me when I can expect to receive what is missing. Number 3 is going to be, tell me, who do you want to track down those missing items? I'm okay if the answer is me every single time. I kind of prefer it because then I know it's going to get done. Okay. But a lot of times let's just say it's the buyer's agent. Okay. We're working on the list side. It's the buyer's agent that's going to track that down, but they didn't tell me that. So I'm calling everybody trying to find that missing item. Then I call the buyer's agent, and the buyer's agent's annoyed with me. He's like, I already talked to your agent and told them that I'm meeting with my client at 6 o'clock tonight. We're going to get that and I'll send it to you tomorrow morning. Don't you guys even talk to each other? So it does 2 things. Number 1, it wastes my time. Number 2, it makes us look like we don't communicate. We're not a team. And I'll just tell you right now, that lacks professionalism on every level. And I will not work with a lack of professionalism, period. Okay. I'm not in 7th grade anymore. The fact is, tell me what's missing. Tell me when I can expect it, and tell me who is going to own tracking that item down. If it's that other agent, good, fine. I know it's the other agent. So I won't call on that. Or if I do, I might just send a message. Hey, by the way, just talked to my agent. They said that you're going to be meeting with the client tonight. Feel free to send that directly to me when you get that after tonight. Send it directly to me or send it to my agent and copy me in so I can get that process to the lender and to the closer as soon as possible. Great. Okay. Now it looks like we've actually communicated and we are actually a team. Okay. So we're talking about processing actual files now. Okay. So what does processing a file look like? And then we're just going to go into the homework. Processing a file looks like this, assuming it's what I just told you. I'm going to get a copy of everything that they've got me. Or I'm going to get a copy from them of everything that they've got. They're going to answer those 3 questions for me. So I already know what's missing. I'm not their private investigator looking through the files, trying to figure out what's missing. But if I do go through their files, I should know what's missing because I know what compliance requires. You notice now I've kind of taken care of my knowledge base on both ends. I know what their broker requires because I've looked at their compliance and I've gotten to know their compliance checklist. And I've asked the agent to know what they are missing and to tell me. So either way, one way or another, I'm going to catch what's missing. So the agent's going to send me everything that they've got. They're going to answer those 3 questions for me. Then I'm going to take those and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to prepare my transaction summary sheet, meaning I'm going to summarize everything in the transaction on that one sheet. Then I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to get everything entered into my tool, my transaction management processing tool, which may be your virtual whiteboard, it may be TC Docs, it may be open to close, it may be A-frame, it may be Airtable. There's so many of them out there, but you're going to enter everything in there. Then from there, I'm going to put together my intro emails. Now that may be where you're sending an email out to your team, their team, and our client, meaning that you're sending 3 separate emails, but they're all templated. So it doesn't take you time to write those. Those are already pre-written. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach the transaction summary, copy of all the documents, and in that email template, it's going to say what is missing, when can they expect it, and who's going to own tracking those things down. So not only do I send the file out to all parties, I let them know the answer to those 3 questions. Because if I don't, as soon as I send the file, they're going to look through the file and ask me, hey, by the way, I see this is missing, this is missing, this is missing, and this is missing. When can we expect it, and who's going to track that down? Okay? Be a professional. Know that they're going to wonder those things already. So that's why I require it up front. And then I send that out and I include that information that's non-negotiable to me in my intro emails. Now, once I've gotten all that information, I put together my transaction summary sheet. I've gotten everything entered into my tool. I'll take one less than a 10-second side note on that. A lot of times you're going to enter everything into your tool, and your tool actually has a feature that will put together your transaction summary sheet for you based on everything that you put together or entered into that tool. Okay. Then from there, I'm going to send everything out to all parties. I usually do it to our team, their team, and our clients. So 3 different templates. Our team being everybody who's on our team, the professionals, such as the title companies, lenders, closers, attorneys, everybody who's on our team, and then to their team, the other agent, their lender, their closer, their title company, or whatever's on their team, and then our client, which is going to be our client, our buyer or seller. And I will never, ever, ever communicate with our buyer and seller without copying our agent in. Okay. Now, once all of that is done, and I've checked off everything on my task list that I've completed, then I'm going to go over to one of those items I'm going to check off is that I've gone to the broker's compliance tool, which could be Command, SkySlope, it could be .loop, whatever they are using. I'm going to log into that and I'm going to save all of those documents, how that broker wants them saved in their compliance software. Generally speaking, that is what it is like when you start a file. How long does that take me? 30 minutes or less. Never more than 30 minutes. Here's my rule of thumb. After you've done a couple dozen files, maybe a couple hundred files, you literally can look at what comes at you and look at it and go, this is missing so many things and so disorganized. For me to even come close to being able to process it, this is going to take more than 45 minutes. My rule of thumb, if I know I can't get it done in 30 minutes or less, I may make an exception to someone if it's a messy file, but I still think I can get it done in 45 minutes or less. I'll probably just move forward and process this. But if this is such a colossal mess and there's so much information, I've got to chase so many people down that this is going to take me more than 45 minutes. As far as I'm concerned, they've given me garbage and I don't process garbage. So what I would do, I wouldn't process the file because I can just look at it and say that's going to be more than 45 minutes. And I'm going to actually go ahead, reach out to the agent, go, hey, congratulations. It's always positive. Okay. Congratulations. So excited that you got a new file. Hope you get 10 more this week. Okay. On this particular file, I want to process this, but there's a couple key things that are missing. I'm missing this, this, and this. I absolutely need to have those things, and I need the answer to those 3 questions for me to fully process this file. Okay. Let me know if you'd like to jump on a call and we need to work through any of those types of things. But other than that, what I'll do is I'll keep a lookout in my email for those missing items and process the full file as soon as I get those. I'm okay saying I'm not going to process your file, but I'm going to do it in a polite way and tell them exactly what it would take for us to move this forward and offer to be of assistance in making that happen. If you want to jump on a call, let's work through these things. Okay. There is only one thing. I lightly mentioned it in the last video, but I'll mention it here. If there is a third thing, because I told you there's 2 things that I require, they send me everything that and then answer the 3 questions. The third thing, you have to decide how hard you want to push this. I have certainly pushed it. There's no doubt about it, but you don't have to do things the way I do. The third item, if there was going to be a third item that would be required, I require that they provide me the email address of everybody who is involved in the transaction. Okay. The amount of times that they tell me who their client is, but they don't give me an email address. Okay. Everything that we do, agents know everything that we do, we want documented. How do we document it? We do everything through email. Okay. So if you get a lender letter, say you've got a buyer coming to buy your property, you've got a lender letter, and you look at the lender letter, which the agent should, but they didn't, and they realized that on the lender letter it only has the lender's phone number but doesn't have the email address, they should be asking the other agent, hey, we want to touch base with your lender and make sure that this loan is looking good, that this is a good client, blah 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 blah, and we want to stay in touch with the lender. What is their email address? That other agent should have the lender's email address. So that's the third thing. I may require that the agent actually provide me with contact information for anybody that they want me to stay in contact with on the file. If you don't do that, fine, call the lender. You might get the front desk, say, hey, I'm working on a file with so-and-so. Can I get so-and-so? Ask them their email address. If you can't get them because they're busy, I just ask the front desk, hey, I got a pre-approval letter from this lender. Looks like on its pre-approval letter, it has a phone number, but no email address. I need their email address because that's how we contact people during a file. And they'll usually give the email address, okay? That's the only third thing that might be missing. So that's how we process a file. So let's go through this. How do I know what I need or is required? National, state, local broker requirements. I think we beat this to death, but there are 2 things on here that I did not mention, and that's going to be the third and fourth one, but I'm not going to hit them very hard, to be honest. I'm barely going to mention them. So remember, your compliance manager and the broker's compliance checklist matters. That's how you know that you're compliant. Next one, based on the contracts and documents covered on the compliance list, get a copy of each document and get to know them. And I mean, really know them. This takes time and work. Just does. There's no cheating that, okay? And the third one, vendors. I do take vendors into consideration, and you already heard an example of that. The title company that constantly a couple times a year tells me that my files are their favorite files. They're just the easiest that they have to work. They wish everyone had to be trained by me for what their file should look like, blah, 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 okay? I look at the lenders and I look at the title companies and everything else like that. After you deal with enough of them and you're sending your file the way you like to send it, pay attention what the lender, if you hear a lender or a vendor or an attorney and you're sending multiple files, but you constantly kind of get the same, hey, by the way, we were curious about this. Hey, do you have this? Hey, could you provide this? And you hear that. My number is always 3. If I get the same question or the same issue more than 3 times, I'm going to build that into my system. So I am going to take that feedback. They may not even be giving me feedback. They're just asking questions. But if I receive some kind of issue or something comes up more than 3 times, I'm usually going to audit and change the way I do things. So that's why my transaction summary or the way I process files is so complete for everybody, because I've listened and paid attention to the common things that I hear and that they wish they had this, or they wish they knew this, or they're asking questions. And so I just build that into what I'm initially submitting. So by the time I've done 100 files, Come on, I've seen everything that they repeatedly are asking. And so I've just built that into my transaction summary sheet and my process and my email templates, okay? So that's where the vendors kind of come in. If they're consistently asking you for the same things over and over again, stop making them ask, just build it into your system. That's where the vendors come in for me. So I pay attention, okay? The last one is agents. There is nobody I like to learn less from than agents, okay? Now I say that with as much heart and soul as I can, because I was an agent, I was a broker, all that kind of stuff, okay? But here's the thing is, remember, the agent hired you for two reasons. Number one, they're looking for leverage, okay? They want to save time, they want leverage, and that's what you are. Second thing is, they want to get paid, okay? Now, who determines if they get paid? The compliance manager. That file better look exactly like the way the compliance manager wants. Otherwise, they are not cutting that check to the agent. And a lot of times they'll say, hey, by the way, I want to submit this. I want to do this. I want to do this. And I say, I think we need this and this. And they go, that's okay. Just process it as is. I don't care what their opinion is. What I care about is knowing enough as the agent is willing to take some shortcuts. The agent is willing to say, that's not a big deal. The agent is willing to I have one agent said, Breckheimer, I don't like it. Everything is black and white to you. I like to live in the gray. This is the number 2 volume agent I've ever worked with. And he's like, I like to work in the gray. And I said, gray's not my color. You're never going to see me work in the gray. It's never going to happen. Never going to happen. And that drives them nuts. And he always wanted me to take his opinion over the compliance manager. And I never, ever would. Drove him nuts. But here's the thing is, he loved that I provided freakish levels of leverage to him. And number 2, he always got paid. He got paid right and he got paid fast. Okay. And that's because I processed the files not the way he wanted me to. Okay. He had leverage for a real reason. He hated all the paperwork. Okay. His files were garbage. And he was okay with that. It's good that he had me because I'm not okay with that. And I did everything the way the compliance manager wanted me to do, not the way that the agent was trying to train me and force me to do it. Okay. Agents are my last resource of training, period. Okay. So some may not agree with that. I absolutely will not take, this is from an ex-agent. I will not take training from an agent. Generally speaking, it's just not going to happen. Okay. Not on TC related things. So what's your homework? And this is the end of the video. I'm going to tell you right now to review. Go to the Google Drive, review 3 or 4 transaction summary sheets. Print 3 or 4 of them out that you really like. Okay. Notice what they are including. Be very focused and notice what do they include, because what they include is what you are looking for when you get the full file, because that's what they're including to share with the lenders and the closers and the title companies and everything else. Then create your own version. Now, some people go, I don't need to create my own version. I'm going to be using a tool that's already got one built into it. I'm telling you right now, I want you to be good at what you do. Okay. So don't just accept what they're doing. Do this homework. Do this homework, because then when you get into a tool that already has one for you, most of those transaction summary sheets are editable. Okay. You determine what fields from the software that actually appear on your transaction summary sheet. I'm going to use one example, TC Docs. I use TC Docs for a number of years. And when I do their transaction summary sheet, I'm able to either show or hide any field I want. And so when I would send out the transaction summary sheet in Minnesota to our side, I would show certain fields. When then I would produce the second summary sheet, it's exact same summary sheet. I would just hide the commission and our customer's contact information fields. Then I would have that one sent to their team. Because in Minnesota, we don't share our clients' contact information, and we don't share what I share with the title companies in regards to our commissions. That's none of their business, okay? Same transaction summary sheet, but I hide certain fields. Then when I send it to our client, okay, I hide the agent's commission field and what the commission breakdown is and splits and everything else like that. And I hide the other agent's contact information. Why? We don't want clients contacting agents on the other side of the transaction when they have question, okay? So I want you to get used to what's on a transaction summary sheet and what type of information are people in the real world using to share with those people that they are processing the files for and sending them to, okay? So then create your own version, okay? Next thing, as soon as you are working with your first agent, find out who their compliance manager is. Introduce yourself. This is going to become your best friend, okay? And request a copy of or access their compliance checklist. That might be PDF, that might be through their software, as we mentioned. I think I already beat that dead horse, okay? Then review the compliance checklist and any contracts mentioned on it. So you get the checklist, determine what documents are on there, and get to know those documents. That's your homework. Now, that is, I am not kidding on this one. The last set of homework was building out your task list, and I told you to do it in half an hour, okay? This one, there's not a chance under God's green earth you're going to learn these documents in a half an hour. This is going to be an ongoing set of work. Learn your compliance checklist, learn the documents that are on the compliance checklist. Know your documents inside and out. Why? Okay, there's a lot of reasons why, but I'm going to give you one practical reason. When a lender, when a title company, when an attorney or anyone calls you and goes, they may have not gotten a copy of something in a contract or they can't find it or whatever else, and they call you and say, by the way, what is the term and condition on this? Okay, and that might be something on an amendment. You should be able to recognize what they're asking you, and out of it, you have a contract and you got a bunch of different amendments. You should know based on what they're asking on, oh, that's on this specific amendment. You know how to find it and you can get their answer immediately. And then you can also just reshare that same document. They don't need you to share 30, 40, 50, 60 pages over again. You're just going to annoy them. If they're asking for one single thing, you should know out of 60 documents, that's on this specific amendment. That's where that's handled. And what they agreed upon and are under contract for is in that particular amendment. Boom. I found it and I can send it. And I do have a rule of thumb. There isn't anything that anybody should be able to ask you. Now, some people think this is a high standard, but once you get it to this point, it almost seems like you can't imagine that it would take longer. Okay. There's a 30-second rule. Anybody asks you anything, period, you should be able to answer that in 30 seconds or less. How do you do that? Not by memorizing things. I don't need you to memorize anything, okay? But I need you to be able to, whatever they're asking, know where you would go to find it in 30 seconds or less. I don't use my memory to memorize everything that's going on. Why? Because if you're dealing with 100 transactions simultaneously, you're going to get something wrong. Nobody's going to remember all that stuff. But the rule of thumb is, are your systems good enough that anything that they ask, and I mean anything, literally anything that they ask, my systems, I could go to my systems and my tools and I could find it in 30 seconds or less. Now, to do that, sometimes you need to know what was shared with you, what type of documents, okay? And when they ask you something, go, oh, that's on that amendment. I know exactly where we have that, where we've saved that, okay? So that is your homework. Now that one, you're going to keep on working on for a little while. So now that I have a task list and a summary sheet, task list, summary sheet, now you know how to process a whole file. How do I learn to be a TC? Well, first of all, you just learn how to be a TC and get the file processed, okay? But let's move on past that process. And this is a really short little section here, okay? So we'll be done in about 5 minutes here. Based on the new task list, and I'm sorry, how do you know how to be a TC? So based on your new task list that we dealt with in the last video that you put together, and your starting process for the files. That's everything we just dealt with today. How to process a new file, how to gather, where do I get all the information to gather to process that file and get it out to everybody. There's only so much you can learn without doing. This is the part that nobody wants to hear, is that processing a whole file, how you learn how to do it is you just got to do it. You literally have to do it. Now, once you can do one file, remember that after you do, I'm going to say a dozen files within a short period of time, you're going to pretty much know how to do the job. Okay. If you did 12 files in a month, even 12 files over 2 months, Generally speaking, you probably know how to process a file from open to close. But remember, I still don't think that's the job. The job is, how do you not process a file? It's how do you manage multiple files at the same time? So what's my answer to how do you learn how to be a TC? You just got to do it. It's about doing. Okay. Now, what will you learn by doing? You'll learn, what am I missing? What don't I know? Oh, I didn't know that. Okay. You don't know what you don't know. So how do you figure out what you don't know? You just start processing files. You really got to do it. You got to have trust in yourself that your task list accounts for the majority of what you want to do for your service. You've got your opening process. You start going through the task list. How do you know that your task list is any good? Again, the number 3. If you're going through that process, let's say you've got a dozen files, and on a number of those files, at least 3 times, you hear someone go, wait a minute, you didn't do this, or wait, I thought you were going to do this. Wait, where is this? All you got to do is say, shoot, I didn't even know that was something that they expected of me. And then you get to make one of 2 decisions. I'm going to add that to my task list, or I'm going to tell them that's not a service I provide. Those are the only 2 answers. Those are the only 2 answers I want you to think about right now. Okay. You don't have to do everything that they ask you to do. It's either part of your service or it's not part of your service. If it's part of your service, it should be on your freaking task list. Okay. Now, what's missing from your task list? You will never know. You will never know by going over your task list 5,000 times over 18 months and just sitting there trying to perfect it. Don't wait to get started until it's perfect. It'll, number one, it'll never be perfect. You got people that have been doing this for 5-10 years and they're still tweaking their task list. Okay. It will never be perfect. Okay. But you will not know what is missing and how effective your task list is until you actually use it. So start processing files. Okay. Then the main thing is now you get to learn the next part of the job, because how do I learn how to be a TC? How to be a TC isn't about doing the file. It's about managing multiple files simultaneously. So how do I learn how to be a TC? You get multiple files in at the same time. My opinion is your goal should be, as soon as I can manage 12 files simultaneous, that's really where I'm now. I'm literally pressure testing my entire systems, my knowledge base, my process, I'm going to call it project management skills. Okay. So that is the answer on how to become a TC. Now, you will find problems. Last suggestion, and it's going to be part of your homework, okay? You will find problems. Track in a separate notebook. I've told you before on other videos, I like to have little notebooks. I'm going to have one notebook and I put names on the top of them for what each one of it is, okay? This one says coaching because I have coaching clients. Let's just say this one said systems. Get a little notebook. It says systems, and you're not allowed to draw anything in there other than, you can't talk about files, no grocery lists, no nothing. It just says systems, and it sits next to you. And every time that you're doing something with processing files and you notice that there's a hole in your system, a problem with your system, come on, don't stop what you're doing and fix it. Okay. What I would do, keep working on that file, but reach over and grab your notebook and put a note in your notebook that says, fix this, whatever it is, and then go put that notebook away. And what I would do right now, and that's part of your homework, is I would put on your schedule during your on the business time block calendar, put 2 p.m. every Tuesday and Thursday. Now, if there's a better time for you, that's fine, but I'm giving you a time, but it needs to be twice a week. And part of that time needs to be on Tuesday and part needs to be on Thursday. Don't think you can time block on Monday. That's when you're doing the most of your files, okay? Tuesday afternoon, Thursday afternoon, and it says on the business. And when it comes to that on the business, that's when you grab your notebook and whatever it says you're supposed to fix in your system, that's when you fix it. You need to have a regular schedule. You need to have a way to track what's wrong, and then you need to have a designated time that you're going to fix it. Don't think you're going to do this stuff randomly. Don't think you're going to do it when you get to it. Don't think that you're going to do it when you get to it and then don't document it, because you'll never remember exactly what was the problem in the first place. Not if you're doing a ton of files. Okay. You got to be a freak of nature to try to remember everything and try to get everything done. Just call it what it is. I'm human. Grant yourself some grace. Write it down and know that'll be handled on Tuesday at 2 o'clock. Okay. So your homework, add on the business time blocks to your calendar. 2 p.m. every Tuesday and Thursday. For how long? Depends on how big your business is. When you first get started, you probably can put in there 30 minutes. Get whatever you need done in those 30 minutes, okay? My business right now, I usually give myself about 90 minutes to work on the business things twice a week. Okay, now I got someone trying to call in here. Okay, get a notebook that can only be used. That's that. And then during your on the business hours, review your systems notebook and refine your task list, email templates, and system each week. That's the end of this video. We're going to move on to the next video, but I'm going to take this call first. You guys have a great day. I'll stop sharing, but that was video 3, and we're going to move on. Have a great day, guys.